So how many of you have you not been to one of my previous talks? So there are enough people. So I wasn't sure I skipped the introduction, but maybe I can say a few words. All right. Because many of you are familiar faces. You've been there before. I appreciate you coming back. So where are we? So I'm actually an electrical engineer. I came here to go to university, got a degree in electrical engineering, worked as an engineer for 5 years, and started my first company at age 26. So I've gone on to do 7 startups, or worked at 7 startups, and 5 CEO gigs. And if you have an iPhone with a sensor, with a fingerprint, we invented that technology. Apple acquired the company with 2 hands in between. And then we all did other stuff. My last company was mobile security that was acquired by Oracle. So I'm right now running a company, or started a company running it in IoT space, real-time environmental monitoring and alerting, so going after industrial and commercial space. So we're doing good stuff like that. I've been at starting companies, advising people. I'm an angel investor. I did many things. And I also actually wrote 5 books on topic of entrepreneurship. They're over here if somebody will look at it later on. I've been teaching entrepreneurship at UC Berkeley for the last 10 years. And also I'm a professor of the practice at Brown University and a couple of other universities in Istanbul and places like that. So I'm quite, been doing this for a long time, been a charter member for 20 years. What I want to share with you today is something different, which you don't hear a lot of talks about this topic. What is it really like to make this transition from a founder to a CEO? It's not obvious. It's not something they teach you in school. What are the unexpected aspects of this? Because you go as a startup CEO, something from looking all happy and king of the world to something which looks like this in a relatively short time. It's kind of like 3 years. So something happens. It changes you. It changes you permanently, and not necessarily in a good way. So what is the transition? What are the things they don't tell you? What can you learn so you can prepare yourself? That's what I want to share with you, because you go through 5 stages. In the beginning, you are the hunter. You got to hunt for the talent, hunt for the money, hunt for the customer, different skills. You have to develop your hunter mojo. How do you find those things? And then you are completely immersed by fundraising. And that's a different skill. Like nobody teaches you in university, how to raise money. But here you are, and there's nobody else can do this but you. And then you go from a crisis manager, because every company, every startup goes through multiple crises. Actually, that's what your main job is. And you come to a point when your company's hopefully moving forward. Now you have to be the execution meister. And how do you learn those skills? What is exactly is involved? To a point comes when you are transition bound. So each one of these stages have different demands on you. So today's my hope is to share with you, because I've gone through all these stages, a little bit more perspective, and maybe, so let's make it an interactive session. I hate when I have to wait till the end to ask my question, because I don't remember them by then. So feel free to jump up, ask questions now, later, whenever, doesn't matter. It's pretty informal, pretty small. We can manage this. So startup CEO often, like many of us in the room, is an engineer. So what are engineers famous for? The chances are they have high IQ, but pretty low emotional quotient. They're not exactly, I had to look up in Wikipedia, empathy? What the hell is that? Empathy? I still that's not my strong suit. Empathy is hard. And the role has different demands on them, and demands you never expected. Most of you're a chemical engineer, you know all about chemical engineering, that's all you did, and you started a company. When do you do the chemical engineering part? Mostly between 10 p.m. and 1 a.m. All day, what do you do? There's no chemical engineering going on during the day. You're doing all kinds of other stupid things which are urgent. including things like, mommy, mommy, he stole my pencil, or some version of that. Yeah, that's what it takes time. So you don't do what you're really good at, you actually end up not using in a direct fashion, at least. So what are some of the roles and demands? So of course, as you know, there's no exact school for teach you how to be CEOs. The question is, your most important thing is, how do you attract talent? Because any company worth doing, CEOs really have like two jobs: attract talent, attract capital. Those two jobs you cannot delegate to anybody. So you have to attract talent. Now, question is, if there are A players out there, why would they come work for you? If you don't have the ability to attract A players, you are doomed. Because A players will come around, they look at, is this the person which I want to work for? Can I learn something from them? And A players are not usually driven by money, because they can make money anyways. That's not their big motivation. Big motivation is, what do I want to do with myself, with my talent, with my life? Who do I want to follow? And it's not the nice guy they necessarily follow. The guy, somebody they can respect. So if you're not that person, you'll have trouble being the magnet. So if you recognize that, if you're smart, you'll recognize that early and get somebody else in your team to be the magnet. So all of us think we are the magnets, but smart ones know that we are not that magnetic, despite what our mom used to tell us. So what is a real core talent? Can we attract the right talent? Because without right talent, there's not much you can do. So your currency will be your vision. If you have a strong vision, people want to follow you. People believe they can make the vision come true. If given the chance, I believe many of you will work for Steve Jobs if a chance came up, even for free. Why? Because he was not like he was a nice guy, but he had a vision and he had a passion, and you thought you learned something. So this is what people look for. So you need to ask them deep question, am I that person? Because if you're not, maybe one of your co-founder is, and he should be the front person who's attracting talent. We need a magnet in the company. Because the second task is to develop deep customer insights and have that clarity. How are we better than others? What is our mantra? What are we going to do in life? So the mantra has to be not a mission statement. Mantra is like 3 to 4 words, one sentence. What do we do? What do we stand for? Why did we start the company? You have to articulate it and make people believe it. Other mistake CEOs make, founders make trying to be CEO, they try to skip the homework. The first thing, they have a great idea, they meet with some friends over the weekend, next thing they want to do is go talk to some investors. Resist that temptation. A time will come when that's the right thing to do, but usually comes not so quickly. You have to validate the unmet need, identify who the customer is, do the market research. Now, you were a chemical engineer, you know nothing about market research. And this is not somebody you can hire. So you have to, as a founder, learn these other techniques which nobody taught you. And of course, should you incorporate as soon as you have an idea? And this is, again, my advice is, don't be too jumpy on trying to incorporate. First, try to build a relationship. Look for that investor-friendly lawyer. Entrepreneur-friendly lawyer, not investor-friendly lawyer. How do you know? You don't look up yellow pages and say, okay, which firm should I go? So you need to find people who maybe attend events like these. Chances are they're taking the time. There's the one sitting in the back. You have a question? I thought maybe you're the lawyer. Yes.
All the major practices have startup,
right.
Offers, and you're right about they run the meter a little bit faster for startups, so you have to watch the clock.
Yeah.
They'll give you deferred fees, but I would say for founders, this is your first test.
Yeah.
Because they are looking at their recouping of the money they've already put out in services to you.
Yeah.
So if you can't convince somebody to take you on as a client,
you may not be quite ready for the prime
It's
time.
actually your first pitch because they're investing in you. So it's a good place to find out whether or not you have a vision that could go. So I was going to say that is actually your first pitch.
No, you're absolutely right. If you cannot find a law firm who's willing to sort of invest in you And typically, a good law firm will give you anywhere from 10,000 to 15,000 credit till you can raise money. So they'll give you sort of a credit. Yes, so that's a good way. And you're absolutely correct. No disagreement whatsoever. And but my point was, even in the big law firm, not every partner may be the right one for you. So do a little dating. Get to know them. See if you have the chemistry is right. And I usually look for them in events like TiE events and other events, because if they're taking the time to come to those events, chances are they kind of like this ecosystem. They may have a better chemistry with them as compared to some guy who's milking big money, doing antitrust lawsuits, and you're like a side show for him or her. So there are some couple of things which nobody teaches you, such as how to do a clean break from your previous employer. Under no condition should you take any documents, any code of any kind. What's in your head is your property, and California law protects you. But don't compromise your polluting your IP by taking something away. It's just not worth it. If you have a smart person, you have a right idea, you'll find people, write the new code. Don't take anything from them. So that's the clean break concept. And of course, you want to make sure your IP is clean, it's not contaminated, because nobody told me about this contamination. So you have some friends write some code, you say, yeah, great, yeah, thank you very much, I'll buy you some beer, and you do that. But later on, when company is successful, that same friend said that I own the intellectual property. I should have like 10% of the company. He said, we just did that over just friendly terms, but the friendly was forgotten by the time company was successful. So that's why you need to make sure that you have some kind of a consideration, like a consulting agreement, which transfer the IP to you clean and clear in exchange for some consideration. Consideration would be cash, could be stock option, could be whatever. So these are the things nobody teaches you. And as a founder, many people make those mistakes. Have a clean, clear ownership of IP, because the day you're being acquired, this will come back to haunt you. When Oracle was acquiring us, we spent like 2 months running like Black Duck, to find every source code, open source, and find a license for it. If not, they made us rewrite it. So this could really come back to cost you, so be careful. Another thing which I'll advise you, a founder's agreement. Among the founders, 3 of you are starting a company, just sit down and write down who gets what, and just sign it. I know it's not a fully legal document, but it establishes clarity of mind, which can then give it to your lawyer when you're ready to incorporate. But don't just make it all verbal, because it'll come back to, because I've paid that price. Yeah.
Example, what would you put on a founder's agreement? What kind of topics do you normally discuss?
Because they're recording this thing, so I'll repeat the question. What should you put on this simple agreement? Again, if you have the friendly lawyer, you don't have to retain them. You can ask this question, you can search it, but it's a one-pager which says, Larry, Jimmy, and me are starting this company. Larry is bringing the work he did for the last 6 months on this topic into this company. He's going to get, when we set up the company, he's going to get 30% of the founding shares. I'm going to run the company. I'm going to get 40%, and Jimmy will get 30%. And expectation is all of us will quit, and this will be a full-time job. Unless Jimmy doesn't quit, then he'll get half the shares we just talked about. That's it. Something like that nature. So it's a simple thing, but this will become important if you become successful.
So, Naeem, you want to talk about, also give ideas on if you have founders and they join a bit of a vesting schedule, and why that is?
Yeah, so he's saying that should we talk about the vesting schedule and all that stuff? And answer is we covered all that in the previous talk, so I'm not repeating it. But you're right, the concept of you don't own the share, you have to work there for 4 years to really vest it. Because you don't want a founder to disappear 6 months later and he still owns the 30% we just talked about. So the concept of vesting is very important, should be mentioned in that document, that to earn this, you have to be here 4 years, or that's a typical. So it's not like you got it on day one and next day you can disappear. So yeah.
That would include you?
That should include the founder themselves?
The main person.
The main person?
Whoever is
Well, sometimes there is no main person. Sometimes you are all co-founders. There's no main person. But yes, it should include everybody. Because if not, when investors come in, they don't want to invest in a company. When you're fully vested, you can walk away tomorrow, still own the shares. So they'll force you to vest from that day forward. You might as well do it right when you're founding it, So they don't object. Well, they're already on 4-year vesting, so okay, fine. But yeah, idea is to do it that way. Yes, sir.
One of the partners, if he doesn't disappear in 6 months, if he just underworks, in the sense as much as he promised his performance, he's underperforming than what he promised.
So that's a management problem. When one employee or a co-founder is underperforming, you need to have a heart-to-heart talk. Well, agreement will be modified at that point. So agreement was based on you fully committed. But the way things are looking, you're only half day, you're playing golf every afternoon. We have to change the agreement. So that agreement which you set up, which was based on certain assumption, and if you're worried about this guy playing too much golf, you can put that in the agreement too. If your handicap goes below 10, you're getting half the shares. So you could, point is that a lot of time it's all done over a lassi, and nobody writes things down, and there's a big disagreement later. So all I'm saying is write something down, modify it later, but if you have nothing written down, you're subject to a lot more potential crisis. Because I've made every one of these mistakes personally, so that's how I'm telling you, okay? It's not like theoretical. So, point is, the time you want to approach investors, when you get to something like what I call a box that beeps, whether it's a software demo, when it's some hardware prototype, because investors' expectation have gone higher than it used to. They want to get to a box that beeps before you approach them. So don't waste your time approaching them too soon till you have some validation. People really want this. We have something which is cracking away. Then you approach them. So this is the validation. But we covered these topics before, so I won't dwell on those. Yeah.
Along with that, I think you want to start building the relationship in advance, right? So that I think that is key, because it takes around 6 to 9 months to do that in any case.
You're correct. So you're correct. And gentleman behind you also has a question, that you should, it's not I'm saying that don't ever knock on any doors. You want to become visible. You want to go to events. You want to meet the investors so that they know you say, I'm not ready to talk to you. I'm working on this problem, but I'm going to be knocking on the door in 6 months. I even asked the question, what should I look like when I show up 6 months later? Well, they say, well, you got to have at least 100,000 customers, downloads or something. Then come talk to us. Okay, well, then now we know. On a B2C case. In a B2B case, make sure you have 2 paying customers, then come talk to us. So yes, you want to have that clarity, because you don't want to start the dating process after you've done all this, because it takes another few months to get comfortable with each other. But point is, don't start asking for money prematurely. That's the real point, yeah.
Naeem, a bit contrary to what you just said is the power of zero, which is that if you have a great vision and you can sell that vision, and you want to hedge yourself, that should your plan not go according to what you thought it would, or should it go slower, you may later struggle for money. So would it be a good idea that if you have a good plan, then you use the power of zero to say that this is my vision, I don't have anything yet, but this is what I'm doing, and you may find some people willing to give you money at this stage, which may well be useful for you to take you forth for the next 6 months or a year?
It's possible, but the hurdle is higher. Either, if you are 2 PhD students from Stanford, and your professor is totally endorsing you, these are the most brilliant guy we've seen, yes. Or, you have 2 Nobel Prize on your advisory board, and you just topped IIT. Okay, that's possible. But that's a special case. Normally, if you're 2 guys, first-time startup, that does not apply. Because many people have great ideas, but very few get to execute and get all the way. So, yeah, special case applies, but normal cases, forget the investors. You, for your own sake, want to know, is this bloody thing viable or not? Because investors will come and go. You're going to sacrifice and pay a higher price of your life than anybody else in the room. So you want to make sure that, is there enough people begging for this? Or am I just going on a hallucination? So it's not for nobody else, it's for you really. So, problem is, suddenly when you're thrown in the CEO's position, expectation is you kind of know the answer. You know what the strategy is, you know the vision is, where people are going. And frankly, you were the same guy like last week. And you don't know. But you can't pretend to be clueless either. So this is a hard thing. You'll feel like a faker. But people expect it's not you're playing the position. It's not you anymore. You're playing the position. So you have to play the position. You have to pretend to know the answer. That's why one of the things you quickly learn to develop is something called executive demeanor. And executive demeanor, which we all joke about when we see that in our VPs in our large companies, is there for a reason. It's, so simple executive demeanor is look in control, although you won't feel it. Look in control. When question is asked, you ponder before you answer. Because first thing you realize for the first time in your life, it was for me for the first time in my life, when I opened my mouth, people actually listened. People were quiet, like, really? Before I had to shake my hand, move around, I have to shout. And as a CEO, suddenly, you have that podium. And you're allowed to not think contemplate for a few seconds before you say. Actually, you have more credibility if you did that. So this is something you have to learn. Nobody teaches you about executive demeanor. So this is the kind of things you have to do. So 3 clarities of the startup CEO. You'll almost always live in the fog. It's like living on Mount Tamalpais. Every few hours, fog will clear and it's beautiful. Then it's foggy again. Which means you have to make decisions with less than 70% of the data all the time. Hopefully more than 40%. But you're living in 40 to 70 zone. Because you don't have the time or the resources to get all the data necessary to be in the 95% zone. So living in the fog is not comfortable for everybody. So realize that you'll be living in the fog, and most of your time will be occupied by trivialities, like filing the state of California Board of that's what I was doing today. Board of Equalization wants to know if I collected any tax or buy anything without paying the sales tax. So I spent 3 hours dealing with this stupid thing. That's the least important thing in my book right now. But nobody else could do it. I have the data, I have the login, I have to figure this out. And then you'll figure out the hardest thing, the most thing which you spend time on is people. People are complex, people are hard, but you need people. You cannot go anywhere without people. So all the things about empathy, I had to go to read a book on empathy. So what is that? Then other thing you'll figure out is almost nobody will tell you the truth again. This may come to you as a surprise. People will tell you, they'll say, things are going pretty good. We have a 82% growth in our New York operations. We are doing a new ramp up in the Miami office. There are a couple of things which are still we need to figure out in LA, but as New York, Bombay, San Francisco, it's looking pretty good. What did you just hear? There's a crisis fiasco going on in LA right now. It's going to blow up on your face. Because later on, when they say, how come nobody told me? Or they say, oh, we told you. We told you. Yeah, you remember that? We said that. So it will be hidden between sandwiches of things. You'll have to develop new listening skills. So this is a difficult thing to get used to. We will never quite learn that read between the lines. And other thing which really sort of bothered me more was, you will never be liked again. I know some of you don't believe it. It's absolutely true. You're invited to every party. You're expected to be the first one to leave. And many of you say, no, these are my buddies. We used to hang out. We'll party all night. No. Party will start once you leave. This is not the party. They're being polite to you. And it's not about you. It's really the position. It's the power position or perceived power position. I remember my secretary was leaving, and we wanted to say, well, let's take you to lunch. When are your last day? Should we go to lunch? Maybe what about Saturday or Thursday? And on Friday, I see 20 people going to lunch. I said, guys, hello. I was trying to arrange the lunch. They said, no, we'll be back in about an hour and a half. Stay here. It really hurts. But you are not invited. Or if you're invited, it's very politely. And you should be smart enough to know not to go or leave early. So this is nothing to do with you, but it hurts because in your heart, it looks like you feel like them. They don't look at you the same way. So this is why you have to get a dog or a shrink. You can't talk to your executive staff about all the problems you're having. You're going to lose the power, the respect, what they expect from you. You can't talk to your board, despite what they say. Board is like that Las Vegas, what is that machine they have, the slot machine? How many handles does a slot machine has? Exactly. The only handle board has is to replace the CEO. That's the only handle they have. Because when things don't work out, that's what the handle they pull. Yes.
I just want to make a comment about getting used to the new role. I think, like you said about the fog, but I think that if the company is in a muddle, it usually starts with the founder and CEO's brain. So if people are confused, they're not making progress, it's really hard as a CEO, but you have to own that. Like, even if you're in a fog, your direction
has to be clear.
Of priorities has got to be clear. And the problem with early stages, there's a million things to do.
Yeah.
Right? So everybody gets exhausted.
So despite those million things, you need to be like a mantra, repeat, where are we going and why are we going there? It almost becomes boring. It's boring to you, but it's not necessarily boring to them. I hate saying that. Every meeting I kind of start like that. Okay, so everybody's clear. We are going here, and that's the reason we're going. Because this shows that you're clear, you're not wavering, your fog cannot come out of your house. Fog is here, but you cannot be speaking the fog. That clarity, almost to the point, is so boring that anybody can repeat it, you have to be saying. Because that's how people want to follow a leader. They want to know the leader knows where they're going. You wouldn't want to go for a walk in Barcelona behind somebody who's clueless. You'll be abandoned them in a hurry. So even if you don't, believe that you're going someplace and march forward with that clarity. So that's why most CEOs have a coach. So I was surprised to find out that even billion-dollar companies, the CEOs have a coach. So I got a coach. Gotta have a coach. And it was good. Because you are so involved with so many things, you cannot lift your head to see. So coach is able to bring you up and say, okay, where are we, what's the big picture? Why are we doing this? So having a coach is not a bad thing. You should not be embarrassed about having a coach. I was surprised at how many CEOs have a coach. Because that's the only person you can talk to. You can talk to your dog, that's pretty good, but that doesn't come back with a lot of insightful answers. But he'll listen to you. So one of the things is culture. My favorite definition is culture is how things get done when there's no written rule for it. So more than anything, culture is defined by the personality and actions of the CEO. If you start every meeting, on time, everybody's saying, I ask a couple of questions in every meeting. Why are we here? What are we trying to accomplish? And I write it down on the whiteboard. How do we know we are done? Okay, we're done if you made the decision on the product, launch it. Okay, now we have clarity. Let's start the meeting. So that becomes the culture of the company. Everybody then begins to emulate that. But you start every meeting, but how was your weekend? How's it going? Let's stretch out, let's have some fun before then slowly, within 6 months, every meeting will start like that. And because you're defining the culture, how you behave. So is it consensus-based? How do you make decision? Is it authoritative? Is it consultative? So you need to carefully watch your actions because you're sending messages. Even subtle things you do are perceived differently. Try that sometime. You come through an office one morning, you look like pissed off, you had a fight with your dog and your wife, and you go to your room, you slam the door. Within 3 hours, the whole office temperature would have come down. Check it. Try it just for fun. Just to see what happens. But you come out like really excited, things are happening, suddenly people will be excited by lunchtime. I don't know why. So this is how culture is defined. You're sending this signals, radio shortwave signals, without knowing about it. So this is one of the important things you have to figure out. What is the culture? What is my role in the culture? What kind of culture I want to create? Like my company now, I have some new employees coming in. I have a lot of young people. I'm hiring this cheap young labor. So I'm doing a half hour every day to 2-3 times a week session on where are we going? Why are we going there? What's our strategy? What's the culture we want to create? How should we work together? So it looks a little boring, but you got to do it enough times so people begin to then believe it and begin to act like it. What you don't realize is that you cast a much longer, taller shadow than you realize. And this was hard for me to understand this. Till one of the VP had to tell me, they heard you. They heard you the first time you said it. But somehow you still think of yourself as a junior marketing manager when you've said many, many times that nobody hears you. So you keep saying it. But as a CEO, remember this picture. They'll remember you. So you have to be careful how you say it. Because in a meeting, once I said, there was some sales discussion forecast, and I said something about, I forget exact word, but like, what the hell? Where are we going to get the sales? How come this thing is late? How come you didn't follow up? I was pissed off. Within 2 days, I was getting emails that company's going down because sales forecast is all trashed. Because the way I just spoke like I was junior marketing manager still. But coming from a CEO, the same word, that how come this thing is missed? How come we haven't? It was like one order out of like 20. It was no impact on the company. But coming from the CEO, he looked agitated. He was loud. He kind of lost his temper on one order. Everybody just read it, that things are going to hell. So remember this picture, that you're cast a much larger shadow than you realize. So temper your words, executive demeanor.
In the previous slide, you said you had 3 behaviors, right? Authoritative or collaborative. Can you talk about what is expected in various stages of the startup, or just problem-based, or depending upon what sort of problems you are facing, you become collaborative versus authoritative versus?
So I will talk about a little bit more, but the fact is, you are who you are. You cannot fake it for too long. So you can fake to be, okay, all consensus based, want to talk to everybody, but if you're really, at the end of the day, not that person, it's going to come out. But I will talk about that. I think the role of the CEO is not to be necessarily authoritative unless in emergencies. In the middle of the battle, there's no discussion for the captain to say, okay, guys, let's have a huddle. We think we should shoot. What do you think? Everybody agrees. Your time is shoot. And you just shoot. There's no discussion. And there's time when it's time to drive a consensus. So the role of the CEO is to drive a consensus, not to necessarily impose because when you can impose, you have the power to impose. But then people don't have the emotional ownership of the decision. They may just go through the motion, but they don't believe it, they don't own it. So emotional ownership is something I'm a big believer on. So that's the trick. How do you give people emotional ownership so they actually own it, believe it, and drive it? Otherwise, the worst fear of a leader is what? When you look behind you, nobody's following you. And one of my favorite quotation, I don't know who said it, but I really like it. He said, thing about power is very interesting. It's the perception of the power. The moment you use it, you lose it. So the perception you have the power is like the same mom saying, wait till your dad comes home. That is a power. When dad comes home, if dad, like after what can he do to you? What are you going to do? So it's the perception of the power is what you have to use. Yeah.
I just had a question. Do you think organizations get tired? Some organizations don't achieve consensus. And people get tired of listening to the same discussion like a million times. So what are your thoughts on consensus if it's not converging?
Yeah. So that is exactly the role of the leader, is to converge and convert rather quickly. See, funny thing is this. People will follow you even if they disagree with you, if they have been heard. People want to feel heard. But if they don't feel heard, they'll continue to resist in multiple ways. So if you can find a way to hear people out, and you ultimately say, look, I heard you. We should not accept this order, customer order, because this distracts us. I hear you. But I believe what's in the best interest of the company is we should accept the order and move forward. And I will take the responsibility if this does not work out. So 2 things. You heard people, acknowledge what you heard. And secondly, you took the responsibility of the decision. If you can accomplish those 2 things, you'll be surprised a lot more people will follow you than if you don't. Mistakes happen when people either don't take the ownership or responsibility, they're still going to blame somebody else, or the people don't feel heard. So if you don't remember anything tonight, this is a very important point, is those two things. And gentleman in front of you.
So I think, so there are two things. Some decisions you need to take consensus, and some you don't. So what are the situations we do and we don't, and how do we handle these two situations?
So what I'm saying is that everybody will have their own style. My observation and conclusion is, I'm not trying to take consensus. Consensus is for the wimps. But you want to feel heard. You want to hear your employees. You want to get different opinions on the table. So then you can make the right decision. Which is different than we're going to take a vote and make a committee decision. So it's clear that I'm making the decision, but I want the benefit of your counsel, Mr. Vice Presidents. Let me hear you, then I'll make the final decision. So this is my style, which may be different than his style. But I find that trying to get consensus, like you said, gets old, gets boring. People are like, come on, could we make a decision, please? We've been talking about it for like 16 weeks. And then everybody loses face. So they want to see a leader who's decisive to make a decision, but he has taken the time to listen to people, consult with them, so he's making an informed and a good decision. Unless you're in an emergency, then you say fire. So if you've done your job, then people will fire because they will want to be led. So, but emergency hopefully doesn't happen every day. But there's no time for even to take input from everybody. You just fire. Other thing they don't teach you as a CEO, fundraising. Money is oxygen, and that will consume you. That when you're raising money, it takes about 80% of your time. All day, because when board calls and investor calls, you got to jump, you got to drop everything else. And that process typically is 4 to 6 months long. So want to make sure you raise enough money that there is at least 15 to 18 months of runway, so you can then run the company for 12 months uninterrupted. Then you got to switch mode and go back to fundraising mode, because it takes a long time. So don't realize there are a few things you can delegate, but this is one thing you cannot delegate. That is your job. Actually, I was when I first time became a CEO, I remember one of the board member came to me. He said, "Naeem, you got what are your top 3 priorities?" I said, "I don't know, product roadmap, get a customer, I don't know, something else." He said, "No, your top 3 priorities are raise money, and raise money. That's it." And I had trouble digesting what he was saying because there were so many other priorities. But turns out all those things could be delegated. This cannot be delegated. You have to do it. And of course, you have to ask yourself, at least once a month, are the people sitting on my executive staff table, are they the best people I could possibly have? If not, why I'm not fixing it? Because if you make the mistake, and I've made it more than once, if you hire a B player because your desperate time is running out, you have permanently screwed yourself. Because no A players will come. They say, I got to work with this bozo? I don't think so. And then this guy's already insecure. He's a B player. He's going to hire C players and D players. Pretty soon you have a mediocre organization. You're screwed. You can't get out of it. You have to fire everybody or fire yourself. So this mistake I've made more than once. I admit I get distracted by good-looking people. I get distracted by time, running out of time. So, new role, new skills. You have to, let me just put them in 2 columns for you. Things which you should not be doing, and usually that's your comfort zone. And the things you should be doing, which were not obvious. So this is like distilling the last 15 years. I became CEO in 2001, so it's been 14 years. So thinking was that you want to be a cheerleader. That's what it is. Rah-rah, yes, we're going there, exciting. That's wrong. You're not expected to be a cheerleader. You're expected to say no. That's your job. Nobody in the company is expected to say no, but more than you. And people will bring decision to you knowing that you'll say no, but nobody else is going to say, well, let him say no. So your job is to say no. And it's okay. It's not a popularity contest. It's not trying to be a cheerleader. Because you ultimately have to decide what we should or should not do, so you have to be able to say no. Then my thinking was, you're the CEO, you're part of everything, you should get involved with everything. You should know what this department is doing, that department is doing, just be involved everywhere. The fact is, that will consume you. And you'll have no energy left for things which only you can do. But your real job is to define a clear direction. And then if you have hired good people, they will know how to get there. That's really the job of the CEO is, we're going here, and everybody knows what do they need to do to get the company over there. Otherwise, you run out of bandwidth. You cannot carry the company. You have to hire people who are emotional owners. So this was not obvious to me. First CEO gig, I was like involved with everything. And it was exhausted. Then, of course, you're setting goals which you cannot measure. We want to be the #1 most customer-centric company. As measured by what? Because we say so? What is the measure? Or we want to, we want to have a great sales ramp this year. Well, that's not a goal. That's a wish. Goal is quantitative. And it's your job to set those goals before. So if you tell people to jump this high, they will attempt or maybe even jump this high. But if you have a vague goal, people don't know to jump, or maybe they'll trip if they jump. Why should we jump? So it's your job, nobody else's job, to be able to set what are the metrics as measured by what. So I'll ask this question, A and B, what is as measured by what? Other clarity is to run a democracy. This goes back to the question of, are we reaching a consensus on every time? And fact is, it's not about democracy, it's about driving a consensus. So I've been in a meeting when I've told people, guys, tell your wives and husband, we're not coming home till we resolve this thing, could be late. We're starting a meeting after lunch and nobody's going home till we come to a decision. And usually you'll find people after about midnight gets pretty agreeable. So you have to say, we're not leaving the company. And so it's not you're going to be popular, but people will respect the process you're running. Let people express their opinion, and you want to hear the opinion because you want to chisel away at the assumptions till you have clarity. If you do it right, most people see what needs to be done. But it's your job to stand up. I had to make this difficult decision last weekend because we've been working on our own software for like a year and a half. We had like team and we're doing the QA for release 1.0. Then I found this is a platform, ThingWorks, which does like 80% of what we want to do as IoT backend. And looks pretty good. So I had to make a decision. Do we abandon all the work we have done for a year and a half in software, switch to this new platform and learn that? Or do we continue? It was a difficult decision. So I got all the people in the room, heard all the arguments, put them on the table, made a pros and cons column. But after everybody had their say, I got up and I said, guys, based on all this thing, I'm making a decision. We're switching over. And these are the reason. And you all been heard. But this is why this is good for the company. So you have to go this process till people can agree. Then I used to believe you should do what you do best. If you were the electrical engineer, you were the software programmer, that's what you do. Because that's what you're good at. That's how you got to this stage. But the fact is, that's not it. You need to make the decisions only the CEO can make. Which is saying no, which is which direction to go, which is to raise money, which is to hire the right people. Those, you are not going to delegate the right level. So that's what you should do. You should focus on only the things you're supposed to do. So this learning cost me 15, 20 years of my life and lots of money. Hopefully you'll take some of these, remember, to your heart and not make the mistakes which I had to make. Because they don't teach you in this thing in university at all. I haven't even read a good book on this. Maybe there is one, but so this is sort of my, personal distillation. The last one is, you want to try hard, rationalize failure. You can always explain what happened, what didn't happen. But the fact is, you want to be brutally honest. Brutally honest, only you can be. And this is how you earn the respect of your board and the respect of your VPs and executive staff. Face the fact. Face what happened. You want to go to the board meeting with this clarity. We tried this. It didn't work out. I think we really screwed up. That's what we think we should do. I'm going to do this. And they will respect that a lot more than you trying to paint over, well, we didn't quite say we were going to do that. We meant it, but, blah, blah, whatever. Because once you lose that trust with the board, you're pretty screwed. Yes?
Do you think that if you demonstrate that raw honesty, that's the only way you can train your staff to have that with you? Like if you don't demonstrate it, can they can't really do it, can they?
That's my experience, that you have to be that honest. So let me just say this. It's going to sound bad, but I don't know how else to say it. Many of us may not be asshole enough to be a CEO. Because it's not that you are an asshole, but you have to become one. You have to be the brutally honest person one. Because it's nobody else's job. You have to set that culture and tone. So that's why being a CEO makes you a different person. And often a less likable person than you used to be when you were junior marketing manager. Actually, I used to come home, my kids and my wife will tell me, okay, get out of the CEO mode now. Like, what? What do you mean? You're just barking orders and like, get down to earth. Because, you've been this brutally honest, no time to waste, this is what we're going to do, what do you think? You're in this mode, chop mode, which is, you have to be popped out of that. So let's talk about the board. Because if you started a company thinking that, yay, I'm not good, I don't have any boss, I'm the boss, well, meet your board. You thought you had one egocentric, difficult manager, now you have 6. One with a bigger ego than the other one. So the most important thing for a CEO is to not lose the trust of the board. And it's easy to lose. Once actually in 2001 crash, my first CEO job, Veridicom, the fingerprint sensor company. So, I basically company was falling apart. We had a Korean investor at that time. And I took 6 unemployed VPs because it was .com crash, 2001, 2002. Everybody was unemployed. So I put together a board, put a press release out. Veridicom hires 6 new VPs, builds executive staff, we are really successful. Since none of them were paid, they were all stock options, and not even that many. I didn't even tell my Korean board members about it, but I lost their trust. They said, how can you hire these people? Who's this press release? What did you do? I said, I didn't spend any money. We were short on money. This is all free people. It's just optics. But from that day forward, they just did not have the trust. So I paid heavily for a decision which I thought was innocent, but it's all about keeping the trust. And then again, learn to communicate bad news, not by email. Email is a good thing to do to communicate good news. Short, quick emails to the board about good news, that's good. Bad news, you have to get face-to-face. Because there's no way you can convey the nuance, the facial expression on the email. So you want to avoid the surprises. You want to approach them at least once between the board meetings. You want to develop a little bit of a personal relationship so they're not surprised. Yeah.
Talk a little bit about how and when to set up a board.
Question is when and how to set up a board. And answer is when you take other people's money. So in the beginning, the board is legally required. So in the beginning, maybe 2 founders could be on the board. But once you take other people's money, not an angel investor, but like a Series A, then they will demand, part of your term sheet will be that they will take 1 or 2 board seats. Typically after Series A, the preferred share owners, the investors will have 2 board seats, and founder may have 2 board seats, or 1 for the CEO, 1 for the founder, and they may usually say 5th one to be chosen either with mutual agreement or recommended by investors, approved by the founders, or some language like that. So that's when the board, but we have a board from day one by law. So typically in the beginning, it will be you and your co-founder will be the board members, with the expectation that it will change as you raise money. So the way you want to communicate, question in the back. How often is the board meeting? And it depends on normally they will tell you, is a short answer. It's typically for an early stage startup, it's once a month. As for a public company, it's like once a quarter, or late stage companies are once a quarter. So in between could be depending on where you are. So some nervous VC want to meet once a month, but I think a good frequency is every 6 weeks, twice a quarter, 8 meetings a year. Because every once a month, it takes you, when you have a board meeting coming up, it takes you like 3-4 days to prepare for it. And then following up whatever you heard, it takes too much time every month. It's looked to be too frequent. So 6 weeks is a good frequency. And there's a certain format to the board meeting. You want to be able to tell them the good news, the bad news, the strategy, some of the major things you're talking about, and a financial update. So you typically have like 4 or 5 sections. So it's what the good stuff happened with the technology, product, customers, bad stuff, which is keeping you awake at night. You're going to come clean to the extent you want to come clean. And then you have a financial update. What is the FUMA update? When do we run out of money? How much are we spending per month, different categories? And then mostly your CFO will do that section. You'll be there. And then any initiative, strategic things you're working on, partnership, fundraising. So typically can last 2 to 3 hours. Yeah.
So it looks like this is more reporting to the board. What about having coaches or advisors on the board?
So question is it just reporting to the board? Is it a one-way communication or coaches or advisor? So like I said before, if you want coaches and advisor, pay for them. Those board members, no matter what they say, they don't really care about you till you're very close to becoming very successful. When you're about to have an IPO, sure, they want to spend a lot of time with you. They want to claim the credit for making you successful at that time. But they're too busy. They will have very little time. Mostly you're being spanked for something. So yeah, they tell you all they'll be very advisory, but if they're spending too much time with you, something has gone terribly wrong already. So you have to get advisors on your own special, which are not mixing with the board. You may call that an advisory board, but just a misnomer. It's nothing. They never even meet as a board member. They just, yes, a one-on-one meeting is just like misnomer advisory board.
Any best practices on how to pay for that?
Any best practices how to pay for advisory board members? And answer is yes, we talked about it last time too, but it is equity, never cash. And depending on how involved they would be and what kind of a celebrity they are. And the range is from 0.1% of the company to 2%. And in the middle, the 3 sigma will be 0.25% to maybe 0.5%, typical. Depending on how famous they are and how much time do you want from them. So I typically just want maybe able to call them once a month. So 0.1% or 0.2% is sufficient. If you want them to come and meet with the company, spend maybe let's say half day every month, it's more like 0.5%. But if they're already famous, you can now get Gaia Kawasaki on your board, you may have to pay even more than 2%. So
Who's as famous as you?
Yeah, I'm a working guy. These guys are, they pontificate, and they don't run anything anymore, or ever did for that matter. So let's talk about this. It's hard to execute. I teach it, but it's hard for me to even do it. But ideally, you want to put 3 things in 3 buckets. First bucket is things you're informing the board, FYI. Like we are doing this activity, our product is happening. 80% of the things fall in this bucket. It's FYI. You're not you're not asking for a decision. The first time CEOs make this mistake. They put everything on the table, okay, so what do you think? Should we launch in July or August? We're thinking about these features. Which features do you think should be in there? And, well, if board has to make this decision, they're going to ask pretty soon, why do I need this guy for? So that's not the question. You inform the board what's happening, FYI. Because first-time CEO becomes, they want all the love from the board. They want to explain all the options and how they made the decision. They don't give a shit how you made the decision. Tell us the decision. If you don't like it, we'll tell you. So that you got to get it down to that level. Second things are things you want to present to the board and ask their opinions before you make a decision or before you make a decision. This would be like hiring a vice president. So you want to have their support, you want to have their input, but you're making the decision. About 15% of the things fall in this bucket. Or some partnership you're doing with another company or something like that. The third bucket is things which you want to present to the board so the board can make a decision. This is like merger and acquisition. This is like raising the next round of funding. Only about 5% of the things fall in this bucket. So don't confuse the three buckets. Because if you confuse the three buckets, you'll be asking for a board for every decision. Pretty soon you will obviate your need for existence. So think about that. Yeah.
For the funding,
I think why don't you give me this microphone so I can hand it to people at least in the front part.
I'll just carry it.
Yeah.
So for the third bucket, what kind of discussion is with the board that, it's your job to run around the investors and, secure some funding. What are you going to go to board and ask for?
So this is when you're beyond the first round. So first round, you have no real board. So this is when you're doing all the chasing. Now you're going to raise a Series B. And if the documents are written typically, you don't even have the choice to make it unanimously. You need board's consent. You have Series A to agree to Series B. So discussion of the board is, who should we approach? What's our minimum valuation we're willing to accept? What do we need the money for? How much to raise? That's a board level decision. That's not a CEO's decision. CEO is one member of the board. So that's the bucket 3 discussion or a M&A discussion. So there's a distinction between bucket 1, 2, and 3, which nobody tells you, by the way. So then priorities-wise, you got to separate what's urgent from what's important. And I suggest you at least one day a week, so one day a month, set yourself aside to disconnect from your iPhone and other electronics and spend a day by yourself thinking, what am I doing? Am I doing the right thing? I suggest you leave your phone in your car and go for a walk by Rancho San Antonio, a long walk, alone, not with a buddy. You need some alone time. You need to think through what you're up to, are you doing it the right way, what is really the issues. This happens here, the big picture. And many CEOs forget to do this. They're not running the companies are running them. So that's what you want to avoid. And again, the concept of emotional ownership. How do you get people to really own the issues? So the thought should be on your mind is, which at least the way I look at it, you could be a conductor in a symphony, or you can put together a jazz quartet. In jazz quartet, there is no conductor, but everybody is expert in their own instrument. And when they play together, good music comes out. That's the best way to run a startup. But if you need a conductor for every move, and the conductor is slightly off, the music is off, then you haven't put together the right thing. So right emotional ownership creates the jazz quartet. Which means you have to let go, because some decision will be made not the way you would have made them. But the question is, are they in the best interest of the company? Do they serve the company? If they did, then let Julie make that decision, because Julie has the emotional ownership. But if you question Julie's decision every time, then Julie's just following order. She became a secretary. She's no longer the emotional owner. So I had to actually, just last week, I had to tell, well, mine is called Julia. Don't call her Julie. Is my operations manager. And I had to say, Julia, this is not a CEO level decision. You need to make this decision. Don't ask me. Because I have an opinion in everything. There's no shortage of that. But it's not appropriate for me to express it. You own it, you decide it. So you have to push that back so people keep the emotional ownership. So then a time will come when things are kind of moving forward. You're running the shop. How do you run the shop? How do you run execution? What are some of the best practices? So I think here again, you need to define a culture which keeps that startup spirit alive. So I believe in creating these artificial deadlines. People work hard, people will deliver if they have a deadline. If they have, if you have running even a marathon, If there's no marker, when do you slow down, when do you speed up? How high to jump? So we need the markers. And your job is to create those markers. Otherwise, there'll be complacency. And again, share the news. I believe in a more transparent culture. Share the, very few things. There are few things which you may want to hide. Like, people's salary and stock option. Although T.J. Rogers even believed sharing that. So that he has even more open culture. The founder and CEO of Cypress. But figure out what kind of a culture do you want. You may have a different expectation culture which you like to see. Because whatever culture you set, people who agrees with it will stay with the company. Other people will slowly peel off. So after some time, it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. My personal philosophy is be open with good news and bad news, because being open builds trust. When people trust you, they're willing to be led. Because people will assume, if you start hiding, no, let's not tell the children, they may freak out. Guess what? They'll really freak out because they'll assume the worst case scenario. So might as well tell them. So there may be a few things you don't want to, but that's a very short list. So the skills which you have to develop as a CEO, one will be clarity of thought. Because if you don't have clarity of thought, and you can check yourself, if you're using too many words to express yourself, you don't have clarity of thought. So I have worked on this hard. If you notice, I hope I'm not repeating any words. I'm not saying a lot of you knows. So you have to work. I had a manager actually, Phil Kaufman, who will take every time I wrote a memo. This was in the 80s, so there were memos. He will actually, in the red ink, will cross off my extra words. Too many words. Bullshit. Does not make sense. Say that succinctly. I'm still keeping those. It's good to look at them once a year. Because he slapped me around till I was able to get better at this. So think about that. If you have clarity of thought, you should be able to express your thought without using too many words. That's how people want leaders to perceive. Nobody wants them to blab on. Of course, the networking skill, because most of your job is finding customers, investors, best talent, so you always have networking. You have to get comfortable with networking. I had to memorize, I memorized 6 ways to start a casual conversation. Because I was an engineer, I was very awkward. I don't know, what do you say to a guy? A white guy? What am I going to say to him? So I had to practice 6 ways to start a conversation. Which was actually, when you think about it, wasn't that hard. You're saying, hey, how you doing? What's up? What do you do these days? What are you working on? I had to write them down. But this is when I was in my 20s. So, I was pretty clueless. So, you have to learn how to start a conversation, how to network, how to communicate those thoughts, and finally, how to sell. You're always selling. You're selling an idea. You're selling a job offer. You're selling something. And selling is all about listening. Selling is about listening. And listening, you're building trust and able to articulate the value proposition, and then listen. And if it asks people, does it resonate with you? And if they say no, ask them what would. Now shut up and listen, because they're telling you how to sell to them. So selling is all about listening. So as a crisis manager, which will happen sooner or later, your job should be to avoid gossip. So there was a time in 2001, actually February 28th, 2001, our Series D collapsed in that fingerprint sensor company because there was .com crash. So the board even told us, call everybody and fire them on the phone. Don't let them come to work tomorrow. Because every day they showed up, you have to pay the whole day's wage. So we were burning $1.7 million a month. So every day was a lot of money. So we actually convinced our bankers to let us get their money back by selling some asset licensing technology. So what I did was I kept 17 people still employed, But the way we did was the CEO and myself, I was not the CEO at that time, I was VP of marketing. We had an 11 o'clock meeting every day, everybody invited. And we'll tell them exactly what's going on, that we have gotten 2 weeks. Now we are going to write down the list of all the patents we have, the technology we have. We're going to approach all our 6, 7, 8 competitors. We're going to offer them, ask them to make a bid. This is what VCs are saying. That's what the banks are saying. But being open, and we will not leave the room till people ran out of question. We were able to take the skepticism out of their equation, and all 17 people stayed with us for 6 months while we were able to license or sell the assets. Then I was able to restart the company. But we had not been open and listening, people would have assumed the worst thing. Many people would have quit. People would have been angry. So when you get into crisis like that, my suggestion is over-communicate. So you can retain the people you want to retain. If you under-communicate, chances are people will assume the worst. And I mentioned before, you got to look in control, even in crisis, especially in a crisis. And I actually felt that when we were told cities is collapsed, suddenly to my CEO surprise, I said, all right, now we have clarity. Okay, now exactly this is what we're going to do. So I just stepped into that role, commanded how we're going to recover the company. This is the plan. We're going to do this and this. And lo and behold, 6 months later, I was the CEO. So I grabbed that job, stepped into the role, demonstrated that I'm able to lead in the crisis, and board gave me the position. Because first CEO job is the hardest, unless you start the company. So this was not that situation. So again, leadership is taking people where they otherwise may not want to go. So it's not about being liked. If you're waiting too much to be liked, you have your own personal insecurity you need to work through. So to be a CEO, you have to rise above that and able to articulate a vision and sort of lead people there. That's leadership. And part of that is saying, no, we're not going to do that. Think of that. You have any of your pilots realize if you have a 2-mile runway, there's only so many pounds you can put on the plane, otherwise you will not have the takeoff weight. Whose job it is to get fat people off the plane and unload the cargo because you only have half a mile of runway? That's captain's job. So you are the captain. You have to get the plane to the right takeoff weight or that everybody dies. So think of that way. So you're doing them a favor. That's why you're saying no. So then a time comes when it's a post, initial stages. This is the role when things are happening. This is when you have to think about scalability, if you're lucky to get to that stage. So this is, there was a time to be very frugal in the beginning. Now maybe you have to rethink frugality, where to be frugal. So in general, it's about time to create processes because you probably did not have processes when you were small. Now is the time to bring in some accounting systems, some HR systems. So my advice here would be, if you can remember one thing on this slide, because I heard actually Scott McNeely say that in a talk, and I really resonate with that. He said, they asked Scott McNeely, what mistake you made in all the years you were CEO of Sun Microsystem? The biggest mistake I made was start building buildings instead of leasing them. You want to minimize the fixed assets. You want them to be variable cost. Because variable costs, like renting, when the economy goes bad, you can get rid of your leases and save money. When economy is hot, your company is doing well, sure you can lease, but yeah, will it be more expensive rent? Yes. But your company is doing well too, so you can afford it. But mistake happens when you lock up our cash in fixed assets. And then you have no room and flexibility to move. The fingerprint company, the way I just talked about going out of business, so why did it happen? Because my CEO was hard set. He's not going to give the VP of sales, Bob Derby, an excuse to not make his numbers. So by hell or high water, because the number was $2.2 million for that quarter, he invested $3 million in inventory. Inventory which nobody wanted. That inventory sat in a room this big. We made hardware, we fingerprint sensors and system. Just because the CEO was hell-bent, no, I'm not going to give Bob Derby an excuse not to make his number. I'm going to put the feet to the fire. Stuff is here. Now you sell. It's your. That's not a smart decision at all. Company would have survived that dot-com crash if he had not spent $3 million in stupid inventory. But that's the mistake he made. So, other thing to know is the timing. Because when you go from a startup phase to raising the first money, to second money, and finally scaling the company, the power shifts in a company. In the beginning, the power is with R&D, because this is where if they don't have a product, you got nothing. So that's where the power is. Then a time comes, sales has all the power. Because if you can sell a customer, if you don't have a customer, you're screwed. You got to have the customer. VP of sales will be the most powerful person in your company. Then a time will come when you can sell, but who should we sell to? What's the most profitable strategic segment? This is briefly when the VP of marketing will have power. And finally, when you get to a long enough stage, is the CFO will have the power and will have a power for a long time. So this is important for as a CEO, where does the power going to lie depending on the stage of the company, and able to hire the best person for that stage. And not stay married to the wrong cycle. So eventually, you will be transition bound. All founders, with very few exceptions like Zuckerberg and Bill Gates maybe, even that happened, or Larry Ellison, well, that happened too recently, but for a long time, those are exceptions. But normally, a time comes when you outlive your usefulness. So this is the point is when many people get all emotional and don't let go. This is wrong, guys. You may not be the CEO, but you'll always be the founder. They can't take that away from you. So wear it well. Plan for this transition. Bring on the right person. So my college roommate, Asher Aziz, who started his FireEye, like a year before going public, they brought this guy together. He was involved and led the decision to hire Dave to be the CEO. Dave had sold McAfee to Intel. He knew the security business, and then FireEye is a cybersecurity company. So he planned for it, and he remained titled as a vice chairman and CTO and still involved with the company, but did not have all that pressure of a CEO, which people have to have. So if you plan it, you wear it gracefully, you can look good. You can seek mentors out of the company to help you plan it. Don't get too attached to it, because many founders do. Yeah.
You talked about the high end of sales, having the CFO kind of run the company. Can you say on the whole period building up to that, where you should take sound CFO type advice, sound financial advice, like how to work with a CFO in all those ranges? Because you covered lots of the aspects of the CEO job, but you didn't really cover the financial advisory part.
Yeah, so CFO is like the kind of guy who is supposed to keep you honest. Most CFOs, when you're maybe the emotional, excitable one, he's the one who has to bring you down. So if you watch Star Trek, Captain Kirk and what was that? I forget the name. Yeah, Nimoy. Leonard Nimoy's character, yeah. That was, he kept him honest and grounded. So CFO's job is that, and boards actually expect them, put them in a different pedestal, because they want this balance. So you want to work closely with the CEO from the early days, of course, even if not a full-time. I don't have a full-time CFO. I have a CFO who comes in like 2 hours a week. But I use his advice to make sure my decisions are sound and to deal with compliance. There are many state, federal regulation. This is their job to keep you out of jail. So you want to continue to have the closest advisory relation with the CFO. The right CFO will guide you, will keep you honest. They have seen the movie before. They've been CFO of other companies. So I've always enjoyed a good CFO as my advisor, but you work with them more and more as company gets into the Series C. Because Series B, you start trying to figure out your customer and think. Series C, you're beginning to scale. Now you need processes in place. That's when the CFO is full-time. And CFO becomes a very close confidant. Yeah.
Do the founder or the co-founder typically remain in the board? at this transition?
So question is, the founders and co-founders, will they remain on the board at the stage? And answer is, depends what role are they playing. They don't stay on the board just because they were founders. They stay on the board because they're playing a relevant position and they represent the common shareholders. Now, in some cases, it is possible for founders to stay on the board. For example, Zoosk is a online dating company started by my students in my class in Berkeley. Now they just filed to go IPO. So the two founders, right before the IPO, they both quit one was the president and CEO, they both quit their jobs, but they're both on the board. And they will get off the board after company goes public for some time, because for continuity's sake, because they wanted to do something else and new and whatnot. So short answer is, if you want just short answer is, no. The long answer is, a bunch of things apply, and maybe one person will step down and one person will stay on the board, representing the common shareholders.
How do you know if that is the right thing to do for the company, the point on transition? You said the time will come,
yeah.
But there are as many examples where founders stayed on,
yeah.
And if the results are coming, if the business is growing,
yeah.
Founders stay on forever. The examples you took of Oracle and
yeah.
Microsoft, it happened probably after Oracle, it happened after 20,
yeah,
25
right.
years.
So those are the exceptions. But out of the 1,000 companies, between you and I, we can name maybe 5 or no more than 10 when this applies. So question is, those are really corner cases. But in many other cases, founders, and there's no right answer. Sometimes it will be 20 years before they become irrelevant. All I'm saying is, be aware of the fact that a point will come when you become irrelevant. Why? Because your family situation changed, because technology changed, because your passion changed. When Bill Gates, his passion changed, I suppose, at some point. He wanted to be in a much bigger stage fighting world health than just Windows. So, but he's capable of it. He had the platform and the money to do it. Why not do something more with your life? So it's not that you were useless, but you could be more useful elsewhere. So it may not apply to all of you, but all I'm trying to make you aware is there's a bigger end game. And don't lose sight of it. When time comes, because you may not realize this, a board member may tap on your shoulder and may say that. But do it gracefully and do it like you meant it and you wanted to transition is. Transition is okay. If company is successful, you have made your money, you have changed the world, now do something else. Because to me, it's all about being a founder is an honor, it's an obligation. And this is something you can carry even if the company is no longer. Robin Chase was kicked out as a CEO of Zipcar like 4 years after its founding. But even today, as Zipcar went public, Robin Chase was the founder. She was the founder. She'll always be the founder. So you wear that well, and that stays with you, and that's the point I'm making. But at the end of the day, realize that control is not the same thing as ownership. Control does not come from ownership. You can lose control. Actually, some of you may know, Rajiv Madhavan started Ambit, was kicked out of Ambit, and he was like a really bitter person. You couldn't have lunch with him. He will always complain about VCs. He wanted to sue the VCs. They brought in Prakash Bhalerao, but I think 2 years later, Rajiv got a check for $21 million because Rajiv sold Ambit to Cadence for like $250 million. So don't confuse control from ownership. You're still the owner. You still have the stock. So don't let your ego get in the way. So encourage debate, because all ideas have to be chiseled away from different people, cutting it from different sides. That's when the ideas improve. Otherwise, we become like a meeting of Chinese Communist Party and say, we're doing this. And everybody says, yes, sir. Because there's no reason you had the best idea. Best idea can come from anybody. So you, as a leader, should be put the idea, let people attack it, chisel it, get it right, because ultimately you have the decision to make. So you don't mind doing that. And then again, vesting, we mentioned earlier, that's your tool to make sure your co-founders don't run away, they contribute. And vesting is your tool, because whenever you give stock, there's a 4-year vesting. So you have to be there long enough to add value, otherwise you don't get to keep it all. So use that yield vesting tool well. But at the end of the day, it's all about perspective. You start a company, you're the CEO, people are saluting you, and you lose perspective. You feel like you're a king. But you're only wearing a Burger King hat. It's not a big deal. Anybody can get it. So that perspective has to be brought back, that don't lose perspective. Most of the time, actually, you will not feel like a king. Most of the time, actually, I remember, most days, I'll be on a Friday night, I'll be on my couch with lights turned off with a scotch on my hand. That was pretty common sight. So it sounds pretty bad. Was bad. But looking back, that was made you tough. That was okay. We went through that. We built company. We sold it for tens of millions of dollars. Yahoo. So that's what you remember. So I will stop here and take any questions. Some of you have been awfully quiet, which makes me nervous. Yeah. Yes, please.
I had a question on the slide that talked about communication to the board.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering whether there has been any pattern or some kind of a best practice, because as you explained, it's all consuming, isn't it? When the CEO really has to be heads down, building the business, and he's the best salesman for the company, has to spend a lot of time with the customers. It seems like a lot of cycles get taken up managing the board. And I think, like you pointed out, most often they really are not contributing towards your strategy or anything that pertains to the business. So there are certain expectations of the board. Is there a way in which the CEO cycles are a lot more devoted to the business and the company and the people there as opposed to managing the board?
So the answers are 2 words. Suhagrat. Some of you may get it because that conversation you had the very first night with your wife, you probably still remember it, and she surely does. So do that. Set up that expectation with the board the very beginning you start. What is your expectation, how you will communicate and what it is? And they may not like it, but that time you're still in the honeymoon. And if you set the right expectation, then you can execute that. But if you let them set the agenda, then you have to live with it and be miserable. But it's a different thing. Who's on the board? The really smart board member knows better. They have built companies, and they will understand, they'll empathize with you. But you have to, set kind of rules. But yeah, does it take too much time? Does it waste time? Yes. Do you have to do it? Yes. Is it going to be miserable? Yes. So shut up and do it. So that's one of the, and who are you going to complain about that? Not to your executive staff, not to your board members, to your dog or your coach. Nobody's going to empathize with you. That's why I say startup CEO is maybe the worst job, really. I say that with some knowledge and experience. But frankly, I don't know what other job will I do. But everybody's,
A quick question about fundraising. If there's conflicting views on who you should take money from, institutional VC versus strategic investor early on, are you at that, do you make that decision, or is that kind of...
No, you make the decision as founder, but my advice usually is the strategic investors have another reason. If the another reason may not serve you well, because a financial investor only wants to multiply his money. They don't have any other agenda. But a strategic investors may want to block you from being acquired by others, may want to have a peek under the hood on your technology, may want to hire some of the people, who knows what. It's not about just making money. So you may want to take strategic investor money, but I would say be more thoughtful about it and maybe do it in a later stage. So I did last company. We went through all 4 stages. We took first 75K came from founders, which allowed us to hire some offshore developers, get something moving. We had a box that beeps. Then we raised 330K from 4 angels, which allowed us to get to a first product. So we got Chevron interested as our first customer. Then VCs put in money. And 6 months later, Chevron Technology Venture wanted to come in and put some more money, $1.5 million. So sure, because they were customers and they were non-competitive, like they were not going to be one of the acquirers. Because the thing is, if Oracle invests in you, then SAP ain't buying you. You blocked the door completely. So you have to be careful.
You talked about a scenario where the VPs you hired, you didn't pay anything, like so. So I mean, at that situation, it was a recession time, right? So it was the right thing to do.
You can't do that now. Well, I shouldn't say I can't do that now. I'm doing that right now, actually. So 3 co-founders. The other 2 co-founders haven't quit their jobs yet. I'm trying a new experiment. I'm hiring smart people from the top universities as undergraduate, showing them a vision that, look, you can go get a job at Google for $50K a year. Okay, $100K a year. But you will be nowhere close to how the plane is being flown. I'm going to give you a seat in the cockpit, but I'm only going to pay you $30,000 a year. Are you willing to do that? It's better than Teach for America or Peace Corps. 2 years, work for us till we get the company to profitability, then we'll pay you market salary, and I'll give you a lot of stock option. Plus you get a seat in the cockpit. And I've even to convince 5 young people to take that. And then I'm pairing them up with those experienced people like those co-founders who have other jobs. They're spending 10 to 20 hours a week mentoring these young people. And we have made, let's see if this experiment works out, ask me in a couple of years. But so far so good. We have a product, we have a customer, we are moving forward. Yes, sir.
So about this topic, the co-founders still doing their job, their main job. How does it work? The clean transition.
IP, yeah. So IP is not as clean as I like to see it. But I'm assuming that it's clean enough because we're separating what they do. They're not using company's equipment or time. So
but can somebody incorporate while he's working somewhere else at a...
Yeah, the consultant. So they're consulting with this company in exchange for stock only, no money.
I see.
So yes, is it a little bit gray zone? A little bit. But I'm trying as much as I can to keep the 2 separate. Will I be in trouble? Could be. But risk I'm willing to take because I'm not doing this earth-cracking, curve-jumping technology that I'm going to be sued by Cisco's and Intel of the world. This is an IoT play. IoT is huge. So it's going to be 1 million companies like this. We're just trying to carve a niche. So yes, I'm carefully treading that water.
I see.
All right, well, you've been very kind. Thank you very much. Good night.